Welcome to Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership, where we bring together leaders, experts, and change makers to share the real lessons behind leadership, culture, and team success. I'm Denitresse Ferrell, your host, founder, and CEO of Culture Refinery, where we help organizations optimize the return on their most critical investment, their talent. Throughout this series, I've featured executive voices across industries, each navigating leadership from a different seat in a different context and with different pressures and priorities. But what this series has surfaced isn't just one repeated message or even a single right way to lead, but a collection of sharp insights, strategic decisions, and perspective shifting moments from leaders and executives who are actively solving for today's most complex leadership challenges. So this episode brings those moments to a peak. So instead of introducing a single guest, this is a curated selection of some of the most compelling highlights from the podcast so far, a distillation of executive thinking, lived experience, and hard-earned clarity. In the clips ahead, you will hear executive perspectives on the power of influence over authority, the value of authenticity and psychological safety as strategic levers, and the critical relationship between fear, innovation, and trust. Several leaders over this series have reflected on the importance of designing their careers and lives on purpose, as well as on the importance of modeling inside-out leadership, the ways that self-awareness shape how leaders influence leaders, individuals, teams, and culture. And one of the most timely conversations in this series addresses a question that so many leaders are asking right now as technology continues to accelerate. Where do humans fit in? One guest speaks about leading with humanity in the age of AI, the recognition that technology doesn't transform organizations, people do, and that trust remains the true speed limit for meaningful change. So I invite you to listen through two lenses. First, how are other leaders solving the challenges that you're possibly facing right now in your role, on your team, or across your broader organization? And second, what is being asked of you in this season of leadership? Where might influence need to replace control? Where might clarity need to replace urgency? Ultimately, the opportunity here isn't just for reflection, it's for integration. Consider how these insights can show up in the ways that you develop others, the ways that you strengthen your teams, and the ways that you shape culture, a culture where people can actually do their best work. All right, let's get to it. Here are some of the most powerful moments from Culture Conversations, Lessons in Leadership.
I think the biggest lesson that I had to really that scraped my knees a lot in learning because I was just making this rookie mistake left and right, which is learning that managing individuals and leading individuals is if you take it if you take that responsibility as I now have the authority to manage this team, and you start exercising that responsibility as from a position of authority, you are making a huge mistake. It is super important and so much more impactful to exercise leadership from a perspective of influence than authority. He needs to requalify for his job every year, and he's been there for like 15 years. Like, that's phenomenal in my mind, and that is absolutely the right way to think. If I am not evolving at the rate the business is evolving, then I am slowing the business down. And so that scaling is hard. It does mean constant exploration on my part, constant rethinking, constantly replanning. Anything we put in place, I put in place with the expectation that it can survive for 12 months. If it survives a little bit longer, awesome, but we're going to outgrow it. And so systems, process, and sometimes even people. Um, there are people who love the aspect of the true, hard, raw startup. Like,
Hmm.
I want to be and then when it gets to be, when it's two people in a garage, they're awesome. But when it turns into, oh, now we, have formal departments and we have to have gating criteria for different things, they're like, too much structure, not for me. And so I think it's super important as leaders, we recognize that that's the case for those around us. And we also have open conversations about, are they evolving and do they want to evolve to that aspect? Having those conversations with people might seem uncomfortable, but it's empowering to them to be able, if they're feeling it sometimes of like, I like this company, it's a good job, but it's not as fun as it used to be, and it's evolving to something that they're not as happy with. Awesome. By having those conversations and just being honest and open and deliberate without being threatening, without saying, you answer this wrong and you're gone. It's not like that. It's about having the conversation of development.
Oh, I love that. I love that, right? That notion of preparing yourself to have to apply, to position yourself, to ensure that you are capable for the role that you're in the space that it is and where it's evolving right now. That is like a critical mindset shift, I think, that is relevant for leaders, but also relevant for anyone who works a job, especially as we're having these conversations about AI is going to take your job and you're outsourcing this and all of those things, right? The truth of the matter is we have sometimes gotten complacent, and the expertise that served you last year does not serve you if you're not continuing to grow. And you have to own that. Back to the point that we made before, you have to be the one that is driving that and finding that to be important without someone just telling you, okay, here's a skill you need to learn now for your next role, right? You have to own it. Leadership is all about agility. You have to be able to respond and bend and move and bob and weave and all the things, right? Based on the information that you have, the data that's coming in, the situation that you're in, all of those things. I think that stands out. This sort of cookie cutter approach is never going to be, and it's never a set it and forget it. Not with culture, not with life. It's never set it and forget it. Definitely not with culture. And I like to say when it comes to culture, you are either a culture taker. So I just come in and I try to conform to whatever happens, whatever's going on. You are a culture breaker. You just disrupting things and detracting from the good things that we have going on. Or you have committed to being a culture maker and you're trying with intention to add value, right? And elevate the way that space, because culture is wherever two or more people come together consistently, that space, right?
Love it.
I love it. Which then brings me down because, there's company culture, but then there's always these smaller ecosystems that build into it, right? And so the individual teams are really important too, because you can't have a great company culture if you don't have that in the individual teams. And so you've worked with a lot of teams over the years. What do you think sets the high performing teams apart from the ones that sort of just get by?
Um, I think it's a mix of things. Number one, I would say, to your point, you have the smaller, call it team or departmental dynamics versus the company dynamics. There needs to be something consistent amongst them all. They can have their own identities, their own jokes, their own, emojis, whatever, but there needs to be a consistent theme of core values across the company. Otherwise, you're not all rowing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
You can, you all need to be rowing in the same direction. And so the prioritization at my current company and my last company is customers number one. If, at Hostaway, our top core value is our customer success is our success. And it's very true. If we make the best product and service them in the best way, they are going to be the most successful at their own business. And in return, they're going to they're going to add more properties and more listings, which is Hostaway's business. And then we all thrive together. And so by leaning into that, reinforcing into that, by hiring for that, promoting for that, and making sure that we recognize leaders that excel at that amongst our other values, it's super, super critical. So I would say it starts with core values. The next thing I would throw up on the list would be communication norms. The At Hostaway, we have a very, very we have a ton of freedom that we give our team. Work from wherever you want. We're fully remote. We're in more than 40 countries, and for most roles, you can work the hours you want. And so there's a ton of flexibility across this, but we do have a hard rule around communication norms. And that is, it starts with Slack. All of our internal communications are on Slack, but how we use Slack is also very structured and very, some people when they first start feel it's a bit rigid because they're used to using Slack different with, they painted the canvas slightly different, but it's so important to how we function, to how we collaborate. 220 people spread around the globe need to collaborate in a structured way to be able to communicate, to share information, to get ideas, to get feedback. And so that would be the second thing. I think high performing teams need to have the core values, the communication, and lastly, accountability. So when you say you're going to deliver something, you're going to deliver it. When you say our goal is to, charge up this mountain or hit this KPI, you're charging for it. And the accountability for, we hit it or we missed it, it sits with that team or that individual, and it needs to be reinforced. And I hope I've also been clear. Like, I'm not talking about you missed it, you're fired by any means. It's about you missed it. What did we learn? Let's improve on that and let's deliver it. Let's hit it next time. We want to encourage mistakes and learning and growth, and we do that by being able to measure it.
Beyond individual leadership, so think about like how we create thriving teams and sort of overarching strong workplace culture, because we know how important that is for organizations' long-term success, but also for individuals' long-term success. Let's talk a little bit about psychological safety, right? We know that that is such a critical component of high performing teams. From your perspective, what are some practical ways that leaders can foster trust and psychological safety within their teams?
Yeah, I think trust is the foundation for all things. So trust is what helps us to have really good conversations. It is what allows a team member to raise the proverbial white flag. I've got too much on my plate. What can I do? Help me prioritize. Without trust, they're not bringing that forward. And without trust, they're not telling you that something is amiss. So it is an imperative that we as leaders are intentionally cultivating open, transparent climates. You have the larger organizational climate, but every team is a microcosm of that culture. And you as leader have to be very intentional in thinking about what's the culture that I am co-creating with my team? What is this culture? If I want great outcomes, that needs to be a culture of belonging, a culture of collaboration, a culture that's built on a bedrock of trust. Mm-hmm. So how am I going to get there? That goes back to being an authentic leader. It's going back to really asking those good questions where you get to know your team. It's also demonstrating your own humility and vulnerability. I think in the past world, leaders had the benefit of being an expert in the area that they were leading in. I know how to do all of these different parts and pieces, and I can help to sustain that team along that process line. The way we work now is wholly different, and you can no longer be the expert in all areas that you lead. You have team members who know considerably more than you. You have team members who are closest to where there are challenges, and by the virtue that they're closest to it, they're going to have best ideas for solutions on how to create something more efficient, more effective. So if you can get that bedrock of trust and you're making sure that all of us are aligned, we're working a purpose together. We are moving a needle. We're headed towards our goal, towards the vision that has been set. But I need all of you, each team member contributing their unique strengths, their unique insights. And I want you to know, I want to hear if something's not working well, I need to know it. So for me as a leader, as a first time leader of individual contributors, I was always holding my one-on-one meetings, held it sacred. Like that was a time where I can make sure I had time to listen to a team member. And then I started structuring them with even better questions. So they might have their agenda items, business that they're leading, but I would have additional questions for them on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you professionally? How are you personally? Well, what's the reason behind that score you gave it? What can I do as a leader? This was the other thing for psych safety, getting really good at asking for feedback on what you could do differently as a leader. And that takes a willingness to be humble, because you have to recognize that you're not perfect, not perfect at leading.
Yeah.
But what you can be perfect at is getting better. I'm going to get better each time. I'm going to admit my mistakes. But I'm also going to come in and ask my team members one-on-one, what do you need from me? If I could do one thing that can make your experience today better, what would it be? When I ask those good questions and I'm showing them that I'm interested in their experience and how they're experiencing our culture, I'm creating a climate where they understand I have their back. And they're much, much more likely to come to me if there's a problem, if there's a challenge. They're much more likely to raise a concern. So now when I am sharing a plan with a team, I ask them, I want everyone to put on a different hat and tell me what's wrong with this plan. I want to invite dissent, because it's only through that we are going to turn out the best plan. And it's going to take all of us.
Because leadership, it is this ongoing journey. Sometimes you get the promotion, you're like, yep, I've arrived. No, you've not. You started. So if you had to identify one essential skill for a first-time leader to master, what would it be?
Master the art of asking really good coaching questions of little. Just get really good at asking, tell me more about that. What are you thinking here? What else could we try? What have you tried? Walk me through your plan. If we can ask really good questions, we can, we're listening. So it practices good listening skills, which also a new leader needs to get really good at. But if I'm listening, I'm going to hear and challenges that my team is facing along that pathway. I make room for innovation. I make room for them to share their unique strengths, their way of getting the work accomplished. And I'm demonstrating to that team member, I see you. I respect you. I know you bring value to the organization and to the work that we are doing on behalf of our patients. So help me to know more about your strengths, and I get to know more about you and empower you to do more. The more I ask really good questions, getting to know how you think, getting to know how you thrive, getting to know what your passions are, because I can leverage that information to really help to shape a unique pathway for you as you do your work.
Oh my gosh, so good. I always think that every manager needs to be a coach.
The ultimate X factor for an organization and a team when people know each other, care. And in fact, all great breakthroughs, innovations, overcoming huge challenges and adversarial situations or crises, as you were speaking to, actually, all of them require people to show up more fully. And the team that shows up more fully, where there's a higher degree of trust among the team members, will always kick the pants of the team where they lack trust. So there's this whole kind of if A equals B and B equals C, that that's the connection. Again, what I would call a golden cable of why caring matters, why trust matters. These aren't like, again, touchy-feely topics. These are directly related to your sales, your profit, your market share, and winning in the marketplace. But too often they're couched as a kind of a something you might do as an offsite and whatnot. So I'm glad you asked that question. But I think at this time when there's a lot of pressure out there that people are under personally, in their teams or organizations, in their communities, this is a time when your performance is actually more connected to your ability to show up as a person and bring that. People talk about authenticity. Well, what is authenticity? Well, one of the aspects of authenticity in my book is showing up with compassion and acknowledging where we are struggling and where we need help. If you can't tell people where you need help and you can't build trust, then people don't come to support each other.
Oh my goodness, Matthew, I love this. We hear folks say it's not personal, it's just business. And I always cringe and I'm like, business is personal. Everything, everything is personal. You know, our tagline is cultivate culture, unleash genius. And when I say unleash genius, a lot of times when you have to show up in a space where you don't feel that you can be your whole, most authentic self, when you have to show up that way, your brain is not operating at its best, right? If I'm thinking about censoring every word I say and worrying about my outfit, my hair, who's thinking about me, proving myself because they don't necessarily believe that I have the credibility, whatever, if I'm spending all of that trying to contort and conform to fit in, that's mental capacity that's not being used to solve the problem. And so the company is at a loss. It's not getting the, I don't have the data to back it up, but I believe that we are seeing a fraction of the innovation, the creativity, the productivity of talent. And that if we can create the spaces where folks can truly tap into their brilliance, my goodness, we'll see so many like quantum leaps in all of the areas that we're focused on. So when you call that out, right, your performance is connected to who you are, and compassion is a part of that, right? I can give you a lot if I know that it matters to you who I am and what I bring to the table.
Danny, I'm with you. I'm loving what you're saying, and I'm grateful that you're out there helping organizations, helping individuals, teams, and large organizations do that work. Organizations are not democracies. Not everybody is designed. They're not designed so that everybody gets their way all the time. We wouldn't get anything done. But I think one of the first and most important things about having an organization where you've prioritized purpose and values within the organization is in itself an invitation to talent. It's an invitation to people to bring more of themselves than just doing a job. To your point earlier about quiet quitting. So that to me is one of the most, and sometimes it isn't spoken about because people want to jump immediately towards what specific positions is a company taking, but it's Ben & Jerry's or some of the other tremendous companies out there that have really prioritized purpose and impact. But before you even get to the specifics of the positions or the activities or the philanthropies or whatever an organization or a company is doing, acknowledging the power of purpose at the individual, the natural working team, and the enterprise level is absolutely essential for sustained performance, to the earlier parts of our conversation. And I'll speak briefly about conflict, because what happens when you encourage people to come forward, you're going to have debate. I mean, I always joke with folks. I say, I don't agree with my family members around the dinner table sometimes. Why in the world would I think that we're going to agree when you put even more people around a business where you've got all kinds of other pressures like profit and delivery and big customers putting pressure on you and big competitors sometimes beating you in the marketplace, and being able to move towards conflict and sometimes often the tensions of conflict, that is normal and natural. And in fact, it's how teams navigate impasses, navigate conflict, that to me as someone who witnessed teams, some high performing and some really struggling, how conflict is managed is usually the most important element of forensics that I'm looking for to understand that these folks trust each other. Am I building trust, or am I doing things to hurt trust? And acknowledging that as part of high performing teams. So again, people, not everybody at Ben and Jerry's agrees on every topic, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. Lots of folks have different points of view on any range of topics, particularly when you talk about things that can be more passion filled, like social and climate justice issues, and having the courage to show up and say, hey, I don't know. I'm sorry, I did something that didn't land well with you. Or, hey, I didn't know. I'm on a learning journey myself. These things are normal and natural when you're in an environment where you're trying to do more than just sell more stuff and make more profit. And the selling and the profit, absolutely essential to the business. And sometimes people they kind of want to talk about them as separate conversations. I really try to merge them into one conversation. Even for an ice cream company, the success of the ice cream depends on all these things we're talking about. We wouldn't have a conversation about business and sales and profit that was really very far away from how are our values showing up today.
So powerful, Matthew. And what I've noticed, right, and I think that this is why it's, one of those things that's easy to say and hard to do, right, is that a lot of times we spend our time and our energy drafting these amazing mission and vision statements and listing out our values. And somewhere there's a disconnect between what we said our values were and what's actually happening in the room, right? On the Zoom, in the workplace, right? It's different than what actually shows up. And I think a lot of times that's the gap, because you rarely see a company who has values that you're like, oh, that's a terrible value. Why would you, you're like, oh, okay, those all sound great. And then you dig in and it's like, but you're not living this. Yeah. And there's that sort of disconnect. And it's like, how do you make sure that what you said is what you do? And that brings me back to what we talked about earlier, that middle, right? Because the middle is what's driving everything. And they're not bought in, they're not aligned. They don't see the direct tie to purpose. They don't create the flexibility for you to lean in to what you're passionate about, even if it's not your exact job description, for you to have a say so or be able to share a thought, right? To even, bring it up, that it causes people to shrink and you don't get the sort of the magic that we're trying to cultivate. Your perspective, right, on life, career, leadership today has been shaped, as all of us has, around years of experience. But early on, we usually start with some assumptions, and they don't always hold up. But usually we go into these situations with some assumptions. I'm curious, from your perspective, what is one commonly held belief about leadership that you found just doesn't serve people in the long run?
I can think of a bunch. Something that sticks out immediately to me is there's a complete misconception at every level and in most organizations that I've seen that a manager or a leader knows what to do with an upskilled employee. That if somebody gets their graduate school degree, or they go through some type of enrichment program, or they build a new skill, we take for granted that that manager knows what to do.
Yeah.
And without, I think, being too hard on the person, I think it's a failure at the systemic level. Because we assume that because someone has a direct report, that they're qualified to have a direct report, that they know how to encourage and uplift and challenge their direct report, that they know how to adapt when circumstances change. And time again, I see that gets skipped. And it's funny because it has a ripple effect. So the manager, the perceived leader, isn't necessarily empowered with the tools they need for a functional change in competency for someone who reports to them or someone who looks to them for guidance. So they do the best they can in most cases. But often what that looks like is no organizational roadmap, no systemic framework, just, hey, congratulations on getting your MBA. Your seat's here. Welcome back. Or how was the leadership conference? Or how was the program? Fantastic. How are you going to apply those skills? And you put all of the pressure on the person to now find the space to demonstrate their new competency in the absence of support. And on some levels, I don't even blame them as much, because that's what we teach people with our current system in the United States of higher education. Kids go to school, they get mortgage level debt, and then we tell them to go with God. The loans will start in 90 days. And so there's all this intense pressure on the learner, or this intense pressure on the employee or the student to identify a path, navigate the path, and make the path worth it. And it's almost like everybody else gets off the hook. It's extraordinary. I have a bunch, but that's something that sticks out right away.
Whew, you are speaking my language. I often say, right, from the other side of that is that we often promote but don't prepare when it comes to new managers. And that's one of the spaces that we lean very heavily in here at Culture Refinery. How do we help new managers actually be prepared to be effective leaders? Because so many of us have had the experience of being led by someone who wasn't quite ready, who didn't have the skill set, the toolkit to lead effectively. So that is so powerful. You also touch on the challenge of integrating learning into your day-to-day. Like, we are in this consumption economy where we consume so much information. Everyone's going and getting this degree and this certification and this class, and it's more accessible. But more data, more knowledge without a clear path to how you apply it. I mean, unless you're trying to be an encyclopedia, it doesn't really serve you that well, right?
Everyone's looking at each other to fulfill the promise that this is supposed to help me, or this is supposed to help you. Or if my company, if I have a company and I say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put you through an enrichment program because you're going to be better. Okay, great. But if I don't give you an opportunity to be better, or the platform to show that you're better, then you just kind of go back to work. You feel unfulfilled. I feel disappointed. And then either we exit from you or you exit from me. And then everyone walks away disappointed. So I think that comes up so often. And even the question, the one thing I say to everybody, every entrepreneur I talk to is like, understand what comes next. Someone's going to do this thing. Fantastic. How are you delivering on that promise? What steps are you prepared to follow to show good faith investment? Maybe it looks like, maybe not necessarily guaranteeing mobility. We can't always do that, but maybe it looks like fast tracking mobility. Maybe it looks like finding a way to give them exposure to demonstrate those new skills. Maybe it looks like mentorship programs that have a terminus and a promise of visibility. Like, it's something. And often those things tend to be missing. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
There's multiple questions. It's right. You've got to apply it. You can't just be. I remember my early days of coaching. I would say that the old playbook, the old career playbook, what's been passed down from generations, hard work, head down, your work speaks for itself, and it doesn't. Your work doesn't speak for yourself. And there's two sides to that coin that you really illuminated so beautifully. One is on the institution, your leadership. I have to create a path and encourage that and open those pathways. But on the other side is, as an individual, I have to take agency and ownership of my steps. And where the path isn't created, isn't clear, then I got to go find, right? I have to go find I always say, find your fertile soil, right? If this soil isn't that, then go find your fertile soil, because at the end of the day, your life, your career is your responsibility. And yes, organizations are leaving so much on the table because if as an organization, as a leadership team, we own that, we get so much out of that talent. That's that optimizing the return on talent piece that we're often talking about.
And so I had that professional image outwardly. But what I learned quickly in spending so many years at the professional level is that it's just even much more than that. It's really how you engage with people and how do you handle conflict. And when you're young, when you're 25, you handle it like a 25-year-old. So age and wisdom is important in leadership. But I think there's some ways to get around it if you're put in that position at such an early stage in your career. So I would say executive presence.
I love that. I love that. And I love that as you talked it through, it wasn't, you really got into the nuance of executive presence beyond what we often default to, just image, right? It's beyond that. It truly is how you engage, how you build relationship, how you communicate, how you connect, right? That's what you're speaking to in order to influence, no matter where you are in the organization. So that's amazing. So that hindsight is something that comes really valuable, increasingly valuable when you start supporting others, right? Being in the HR space and being in a more senior leadership role, right? You have the honor, the responsibility for not just your career and your leadership approach, but that of those that are coming behind you and that you are responsible for. And so you've seen, I'm sure, a lot of new managers step into that first role, oftentimes under pressure, urgency amidst change. What are some of the patterns that you've noticed in those early struggles? And what kind of support or coaching have you seen that actually helps them succeed?
The number one thing that I've seen, characteristic flaw that I've seen from new leaders, both in terms of their experience in being new, as well as their age in terms of starting into their career, is the lack of patience.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of decisions that I've seen new leaders make that are rash decisions that lack a lot of thought, a lot of intentionality, a lot of strategy. And if they had taken the moment to just step back, take a deep breath, not get overwhelmed, not have too much anxiety, they would have made better decisions with a clearer head.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen a lot of leaders really almost destroy their career because they made very quick, unthoughtful decisions that not only impacted others, but most importantly, impacted themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The other character flaw that I've seen that a lot of leaders make, especially new leaders, and also more seasoned leaders, quite frankly, is that they don't stick around during the hard times. Organizations want transformational leaders. They want leaders with a stick to itness. You can't run when it gets challenging. You have to attack those challenges head on. And you have to be able to galvanize a group of people that can get buy-in with what you're trying to do and that can help you accomplish the goal. But running away too soon and trying to run to the next organization when it gets hard, and then when that organization gets hard, then you're off to the next organization. I've seen leaders that can't bounce back from that because your resume shows it. It shows how you move around. And although that is more acceptable now, the question will be asked when the going gets tough, how do you respond?
Our approach to leadership, we always say we take this inside out approach.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we do a lot of work with brand new managers. So a lot of times when you're just starting, you take the positioning from like a power perspective and you immediately go try to manage a team. And no, we're not thinking about the team just yet, friends. You have to start with you.
Yeah.
And when you get to, and that's the whole self-awareness and the EQ and, understanding who you are, what you want, where you find your joy, what value you add. And then you don't even go to the team next. You get to go to your individual relationships. It's not the whole yet. You have to manage those individually before you can think through the whole. And then the other, you talked about, I love the term sort of do a heat map on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where are you in terms of what the where within your organization and what the organization needs? And we talk about sort of elevating your strategic impact, right? And that fourth level of our inside out leadership is really getting outside of yourself and outside of your team and thinking about where do we all fit. It's one of those things, to your earlier point, that it comes with experience, with age, wisdom. When I look back, I see, if I'd known these things, or if I'd taken this pause, or I'd recognized this, or if I look back, I saw, oh, that was me. That wasn't them, it was me. That's all coming together. And that's part of the reason why we do these conversations, right? Be able to have someone give us sort of their roadmap and those lessons early. So maybe if only we can avoid some of those pitfalls.
I was a great operator when I first got into leadership, but I was an immature leader. I was a 25-year-old leader with a 25-year-old mind, looking for just tangibles. When I think about where I am now, I see so much growth in myself, and my discernment is so much stronger. My confidence is so much stronger. And most importantly, I'm in leadership for the right reason. It's not for those, just those titles and, making a certain salary. That doesn't define success versus, do I find joy in the work that I do? Am I making an impact? Can I influence others? So just looking back, it is so much more gratifying now to be in leadership because of that growth that I've experienced just personally.
Whew. Now, Veronica, that's a whole word right there. That is, as my mom would say, that right there, that'll preach. That will preach right there.
It will behoove you, no matter what level you're in, to always be thinking about what tangible skills do I need to have in case plan A doesn't work. And one of the things that COVID has taught us is that trades are important. I have a lot of degrees. I have 4, and that is phenomenal, and that is great. But one of the things my mother always told me, she always said, learn a skilled trade, whatever that means, but learn something outside of your educational parameters, because as long as you can speak, use your hands, you can always make money. And so success, education, what makes you valuable, what makes you viable looks very different now. The world has shifted that in a lot of ways.
There's so many nuggets in here that I want to double tap on all of this. Like, I think what stands out really strongly to me, where I really just started nodding and couldn't stop the nodding, was not just the committed to staying in control of your career, but this notion of owning the ability, like owning your value, knowing your worth. And my background has been with organizations where people stay for a long time, right? They graduate undergrad and they're staying at that facility, that organization until they retire.
That's not a bad thing.
And it's not.
No.
When it becomes a bad thing is when they feel stuck because they don't know what they can do. They don't know what they can command in the market. They don't know what else is out there. They feel like this is all that I can do, because they've now let this notion, this illusion of stability allow them to get complacent. And I think one of the things that COVID did, and we're in this environment of just a lot of uncertainty right now, that's ongoing, what that is showing is that what we thought was stability,
Yeah.
it's not as stable as we thought it was. And so you have to be rooted in what you bring to the table. You have to be rooted in who you are and what you can command and how you can move things around and be versatile in the ways and be able to see that. That is so powerful. And you've got to own it, because when you don't own it, it's like, paying for a gym membership and paying for a personal trainer. It creates a different commitment, a different level of intentionality around it. And
And so really what we're trying to build in the human, right? Because it's all about the human. This isn't about the technology. Everybody's trying AI, AI, AI. This is about you. This is about you and how you're able to use AI to your benefit. And so we really talk about the human, and the human benefits what we call the 5 C's. So you get competence and confidence by learning. Once you learn it, then you have to have the connectivity, and that's that network learning and building social capital, allowing yourself to be in the presence of other people that need that knowledge so you can demonstrate your value. And by that, you end up building your capability and your capacity. And so those 5 C's kind of sum up how we see all learning as it benefits you, the human. When I was leading the cloud efforts at Microsoft, one of the things that happened, and I think this really defines where we're at now. I was going around as the subject matter expert for North America, and I was going around to engineers trying to get them to help us with cloud. And these folks had very tenured engineers. They've been there for a long time. Well, what I found out was the thing they're not used to, when we go onto a site to help a customer and something just came out and the customer asks you about it, and this is the first time you've heard it mentioned, for them saying, I don't know, let me find out, was almost impossible. So I really adopted working with college hires, quite frankly, and I was doing a lot of mentoring of the college hires, and they were much more flexible in that way because they didn't know anything. They were learning everything. So we went through a pretty significant shift in engineers because these folks were willing to go out with the cloud stuff and say, I don't know, let me find out for you. And so that was a huge shift. And so the authenticity of saying, I don't know, is really hard in the tech business to crack.
mm-hmm.
And that is a must with AI because we just don't know.
Yeah. And it's a must with AI, but it's just a must in general, right?
It is. It really is.
The world is ever changing, and if we want to have a growth mindset and continue to push forward, there's always going to be things that we don't know. And the real test is, are we willing to go do the work to find out? Do you know where to look? Do you have some direction of where to sort of start this search? Do you have a process that you can rely on when you're navigating ambiguity and uncertainty and all the unknowns? That's the true test of us as leaders, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that process piece is bigger than most people think, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have some significant processes that we can lean on. We particularly use Agile. But when you start to add the tools in, and these tools are not like any other tools, they're more like adding a human in, especially with the onset of agentic AI.
Yeah.
So you're actually adding another member to the team. This becomes a little different because, particularly when it comes to issues like trust and reliability, and all of those things start to creep up. And now you're managing not people, you're managing AI. And that dynamic is something different than we've ever seen before.
Tell me a little bit more about sort of what it's like and what it takes for leaders to make that shift from just managing people to managing a process that operates as if it was a person.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I learned when I was dealing with cloud technology, which was coming at a very rapid pace. Not as rapid as AI, but it was coming at a pace that was faster than our ability to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so engineers were not able to keep pace with the releases of technology that was coming out. And then we had to go help people as the expert. So what became a factor, one of the things that I really tuned into is how to create collaboration networks to serve. So while I don't know what you do and you don't know what I'm an expert in, we can start to take our positions in different areas. And as long as we collaborate and communicate with each other, I know what area you're good at, you know what area I'm good at. And as the subject matter expert, I was able to coordinate different people so that they could go to the resources that they needed when they needed it, rather than trying to know everything, because no one knows it all.
We know that transformation is not easy. It takes time. And you alluded to this before, actually said it very clearly. You didn't allude that, technology often moves faster than we can. It moves faster than how fast we can learn. It's faster than our expectations of people and of culture. And so when you're thinking about how you help leaders and organizations, how do you help them embrace what you call the seed time versus the harvest mindset and trusting that process instead of chasing those instant outcomes?
Yes, I think that's a personal quality around patience
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that you brought up cultivating. So if we think about cultivating, you cannot make a flower grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You have to, tend the soil, make sure it gets sunlight, make sure it gets water, but you can't make it grow. And that seed time, harvest time, that's what it is. It is describing that no matter how much you want to, you can't put a orange seed in the ground today and go pick oranges tomorrow. And so how bad do you want oranges? You want it bad enough to wait and reset your expectation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the oranges aren't going to grow any faster just because you demand it. So that's called maturity. And so when we think about organizations, are they AI mature?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a lot of people's bonuses are riding on hitting these deadlines and all transforming these companies, and rightly so, they're pushing very hard to get there. But I think with that said, you also have to temper that with understanding that it's not just the technology. So, quite frankly, the reason I was visiting a lot of the companies I was visiting when I was with Microsoft is because their AI, their cloud efforts were stalling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was stalling because people didn't know about their future. And that is the case now in a much larger sense. What is my future here? I'm inclined not to work all that hard if I know I'm not going to be here as a result of that work. We're humans. That's you don't have to be AI to figure that out. But our leaders are many times looking at different factors and not factoring that in. And so we have to come with authenticity. We have to come with imagination, because the imagination tells you, well, what is the future of the folks that you're talking to? Can we
Mm-hmm.
talk about what that may look like? And this is where that infinite resource of creativity comes from. So what are you going to do after we do this? What are you going to do when what you do becomes automated by this AI? And this isn't a new problem. I've spent most of my career automating things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in many, many environments where this is the conversation, and I'm very transparent about it. What do you think you need to do? Do you want to continue to do this? Because it's going to start moving at a faster pace. There's going to be a lot more demand, right? Is this something, or do you want to do something else?
AI's here. It's not going anywhere. How do you sort of ramp up and build your comfort with it? And as leaders, how do we nurture and support that? I'd love to hear your view on what leadership competencies specifically start to become even more essential in an AI-enabled workplace. What remains distinctly human no matter how much technology advances, and what are the things we should be thinking and leaning towards as we're considering what are the things that we take off of our plate versus what we hold on to?
Yeah. It's such an important question, because the leadership competencies are not going to go away. They are not going to go away, because we are still going to be leading our people, right? So how we lead with change is still going to be very critical. How we foster new ways of doing things are going to be very important. How do we drive collaboration across the teams and enterprise is going to be more critical than ever before. So let me walk you through a little bit of scenario that I see that is already starting to take place, right? I talked a little bit about Culture 3.0. And so we are now in a place where we are getting more insights at a pace that we have never even seen, because we may get an insight at 9 o'clock in the morning and chances are by 11:30 it's already mute, right? Every single team right now has got a set of intelligence coming through. So what I like to call culture, every company has this big spaceship, call it artificial intelligence. And then you've got all of these different subsets of artificial intelligence that are feeding right into it. That's marketing, finance, operations, HR, legal. They're all coming into it. Every single function, every single team now has AI solutions available. This is a new evolution. I'm not using the word revolution, but I'm using the word evolution in the entire century, decade, whether you want to call it an industrial, whether you want to call it a workforce. What do I mean? In the 80s and 1990s, we had the outsourcing taking place. Then came cloud. And here's where we are. But every single time, there was a hierarchy of investment of technologies. It would always be sales first because it's revenue generated. Then it would come to your product or your technology. Then it would come finance. Then would come operations. Either way, there was always a hierarchy. Even when cloud started, not with AI. Every single team, you can put in 50 immediate solutions and you can get them. Now, second piece about all of that is, which is where I'm going towards all of this, how are we interacting? We have got avatars. We have got transcripts. So I don't have to attend every single meeting. I may be represented by my avatar. I may just have to not attend and read the transcript. That's a whole new way of doing work. Let the genetic AI, Gen AI kick in. And now I'm going to be dealing with interactions that are going to be very different because they're not going to be human related. They're going to be human centric, but they're going to be AI led. How are we all going to deal with all of this? How are we helping people to realize that? And it may be very easy to say, oh, I got the transcripts. Time? Who's reading all of this stuff? Especially when you got takeaways assigned to you. So you got to make the time. This is where I'm bringing it all into what are the new competencies that are going to come for leadership. Empathy is not going to go away. Empathy is going to be even much more needed now because we're going to have less people on our team, but they're going to be very different role scopes. The coordination, the administrative tasks, the routine efficiencies, AI is going to take care of. Every single team now is going to be a little bit of a product specialist. I give credit to Walker James, who has done some great research work. He's based in Hamburg, Germany. And the new HR AI model now is the few limited HR people are all going to be product managers because your tasks are now being taken care of. So how are you going to drive all of that? That's going to be another piece of it, which is tied back to collaboration, because that's where all of the different teams and the systems, as they are reading with each other, they are going to be able to be the expert over there. So that is going to be needed. The third piece is, when we go, part of all of this is always have a plan B, plan C, plan D ready, because something may go wrong and you don't want to think about that. That is going to be needed more than ever before because AI is not coming up with that, all of it. So your strategic mindset is going to be more active now because as you're going to be receiving the stuff, you're going to be ready and planning for that, which I think is great because you always want to have a plan ready for the downstream impact that's going to take place.
We talk about this notion of applying sort of systems thinking to you as a leader and the impact that you're expected to have. How are you, even at the very early stages in your career, how are you being more intentional about understanding the various swim lanes that seemingly aren't related, but could have you glean some insight? So, yes, you're in supply chain, but what are the connections? What's going on in marketing that you can glean? And do you understand it well enough? I heard that. And I also heard from you, especially as we are having to shift into being kind of product owners too in the functional space. What I akin it to or liken it to is that internal sort of entrepreneurship, right? And so, what you have to be able to sell what your team is bringing to the table. So that influence, as you spoke to before, is going to be so powerful. We do work with teams around team branding. How do you brand and position your team in the organization? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to be leveraged in the organization? How do you want people to engage with you in the organization? I see that is going to be coming. It's already there, but it's going to be heightened even more as we continue to push forward.
Yeah, I see that the new world is also going to be that, we've talked about having the customer mindset, right? But it has been so far very much external centric, which is a fact. Now with AI, I see that same concept coming in inside as well, right? That is why anyone who belongs in any team, you're going to have that product owner mindset, because your product value prop that you have within your team is going to be used by other peers and other members. Yeah. They've got to be able to see the value of it and experience the value. And this is where I said that the swim lanes are now going to evolve, where truly it is going to be an ecosystem. You will not be able to say where, hey, well, this is the system that we have, and I understand that it is a little archaic. I understand that it's a little clunky, but that's just how it's going to have to be, and that's the end of it. That is not okay anymore. It is not okay internally. It's not going to be certainly not okay externally, and there will be challenges of that. The challenge may not come from your own team, but it may come from another team. But because, again, more than ever before, this workforce is going to be uber knowledge based. I mean, you just look at the 5-year-olds now, and I'm like, when I was 5, I know what I was doing. And you just get to see how it is. So if I'll use this as a simple example. If you're still having to log in to go and put in a vacation request and do all of that stuff by the time it goes into your leader, I mean, the amount of time that is getting spent over there and the follow-ups, whereas there is already an AI solution that can get that done in 4 minutes without anyone else getting in, and it's all recorded and it's all signed. If you are not thinking that way, it's going to get very difficult for you